Welcome to Beaches Watch monthly meeting. I'm Maria Mark, the president of Beaches Watch, and I welcome you here tonight. I'm glad to see a great crowd. I understand we might have some competition with JU. They're holding a similar workshop in Town Hall on the same subject matter, so we're happy that you're here tonight. So our topic tonight is the Beaches Vulnerability Assessment. We'll have Shane Corbin, who is our newly appointed city manager of Atlantic Beach, as well as Steve Swann, who is our City of Atlantic Beach engineer. They will be presenting the vulnerability assessment that Atlantic Beach did. So before we get started with them, we always like to recognize our elected officials and our special guests. So tonight we'll start with Jack's Beach. If we have any elected officials, current or past, if you would stand to be recognized. Sandy Golding. And I have to give a shout out to Sandy. She was voted the best city council person in Portfolio Weekly's 2019 list. So,
And George.
Yes, I will say something about him later. But I also want to give a shout out because I think Matt Carlucci came in second, City of Jacksonville, as well as Scott Wiley from Neptune Beach. He came in third, and then Georgette Dumont, who's also on the City of Jacksonville Beach City Council. She came in fourth. So a big round of applause. So from Neptune Beach, past, present officials, we have Carrie Chen. Thank you for coming. Anyone else? Neptune Beach? Okay. And Atlantic Beach, we have Mayor Ellen Grasser. Thank you. We also have in the audience Jackie Smith, who is the Director of Special Ops with Representative John Rutherford's office. And we have George Forbes, the former city manager of Jacksonville. And we also have Jeffrey Sample, who is the outreach director for the St. John Oklahoma. Anybody else want to be recognized here? Yes. Okay. All right, so as you may or may not know, we do videotape our meetings, so they will be uploaded to our website tomorrow. Hopefully you got an agenda that shows all the announcements. So I just want to briefly cover some of them because there are some of them are really important coming up. We're always having our membership drive. That's always up and running. So it's $5 for students, $15 for individuals, and $20 for family. The memberships are valid January through December. If you do an early bird renewal through December 31st, you will be entered to win a special prize at our member social, which is coming up March 4th. It will be at the Beaches Historic Museum down in Jack's Beach. And it will be a Sweet 16 surprise. So make sure you renew or join before then. We are also requesting nominations from our community for our 10th annual 2019 Give Back Award. This is where we recognize an organization, a 501c3 organization, who has has contributed to the quality of life for our community here at the beaches. So we just ask for a couple paragraphs of why you think this organization would be worthy of the Give Back Award. The deadline is this Friday, November 8th. So it tells you on the agenda where you can send your nomination. We've also recently partnered with the Palms Presbyterian Church in their initiative called Deliberative Dialogue. And each month they have a different topic that is germane to the beaches. And the next topic is about sea level rise and climate choices, which kind of piggybacks onto what our presenters are going to talk about tonight. So this is open to the public, and we really encourage, it's all about the community, it's about the community coming together, and just having a dialogue about these different issues, and then how we can come together as a community and find common ground to come up with solutions to these issues. So it's not a lecture, it's not a debate, this is all about interactive, it's all about participating. And so as we work through these conflicting choices, common ground is identified, and individuals see how their goals are shareable and how they overlap. So the pros and cons are vetted, they are weighed with regard to choices, and then hopefully what we ultimately want is to identify an acceptable path of action going forward to combat these issues. So if you, so it tells you if you want to participate, you can RSVP. It gives you the email, and it is scheduled for Tuesday, November 12th at Palms Presbyterian in Jacksonville Beach. It goes from 6 to 8:30. They do serve a light dinner, so they do ask for RSVPs if you can. To Jeffrey Samples' presence here, watering restrictions are now effective November 4th. It tells you on the agenda exactly what those restrictions are, so please abide by those. Jacksonville Beach is seeking volunteer board members, so they're looking for members to volunteer for the Board of Adjustment, the Planning Commission, Pension Board, and Board of Appeals. It also tells you how you can apply. And then Jacksonville Beach will hold their Citizens Police Academy. If you have not attended, if you've not participated in the Police Academy, I highly encourage you to do that. It's time just well spent, and as well as your family members too. I participated in the Atlantic Beach Citizens Police Academy, and you really get a deep experience as to what our men and women in blue do every single day. And I have to say, the SWAT night, when you actually got to come on all that equipment, and I mean, it was like 50 pounds, and I'm thinking, how in the heck do you even move in this stuff? But it is amazing, it really is. And you even get to fingerprint and do all that, dusting your fingerprints, and it does. It gives you just that side of our enforcement, our law enforcement, that you don't really see as a citizen. So I highly encourage everyone to sign up for that. Plus, you can then volunteer. They're building their volunteer base, and the citizens, the alumni from there, they do a tremendous service for the police department as far as volunteer hours. And speaking of that, I do want to give a shout out to Chief Pike and the Neptune Beach Police Department and Teresa Rooney, because without them, we would not be able to hold our meetings here due to the changes in the library hours. And so Chief Pike stepped up immediately, realizing the value of what Beaches Watch does each month. So we want to thank you and Teresa for doing that. And as I said earlier, we have our Beaches Watch, our social coming up, so please save the date. It's Wednesday, March 4th. And we are, what we normally do is we have a raffle, so we kind of ask our local businesses to donate something so that we can support our local businesses. So if there's anyone here who either has a relationship with a business or is a business owner and would like to donate, we are taking those donations. So either see me or one of our board members in blue to let us know. We would gladly take your donation. And last, our upcoming Beaches meeting, next meeting is December 4th, and that's where we will be awarding our Give Back Award, or Give Back donation. So please put that date on your calendar as well. It's Wednesday, December 4th. So, and also on the back of your agenda, we also list where all the contact information for all of our elected officials. So that way you know how to let them know if you need something. And with that, I will wrap up the announcements, and we'll go ahead and bring Shane and Steve up to talk about the vulnerability assessment.
Thanks, summary. As she stated, I'm the new city manager in Atlantic Beach. I'm on my 5th week, and I haven't been chased off yet. Mayor is keeping me very busy. She's extremely active, and I'm having a lot of fun. But before that, I was the city's Planning and Community Development Director for about 1.5 years. Before that, I was in the city of Savannah for a few years, and before that, I was in southern Indiana and Louisville, Kentucky for about 26 years of my life. My background is in urban planning and urban design, land use, and zoning. So I'm kind of a nerd on that kind of stuff, but I'm not an engineer. I work with engineers all the time, but we did not have a city engineer at Atlantic Beach when I first started. And I was working with our grant writer on any number of possible grants that we could dip into for projects, and she brought to my attention a grant from the Florida Environmental Protection Agency that was for resiliency due to sea level rise. It's about a $45,000 grant. She asked me if I was interested in it, and I said yes. And so we put together a grant. We, through not having any background in coastal engineering, wrote a very prolific grant that had lots of requests of things that I wanted to accomplish in it. And we won the grant. I got no advice from the actual state on what I could accomplish with what I was asking and funding. But right about that time, we hired Steve Swann, who is not only a local, but has an extraordinary amount of experience with coastal engineering projects all over the world. So while I was writing an RFP to bring an engineering firm on to actually do the work, I asked Steve if he would look over it for me and give me some advice, not thinking that it would really change that much. And he actually brought it to me and said, yeah, this isn't going to work. You've got to, for the money that you've got, you're not going to accomplish a quarter of what you've got in this grant request. And we'd already won it for what we'd made the request for. And this was my first experience with Steve. I wasn't sure what to think at first. I was, who is this guy? He's taking over my project. But as we started working through it, I found that he really knows his stuff. And I really give all the credit to him for taking this project to the next level. We feel really good about the results. And with that, I'm actually going to turn this project over to him for the evening to get through the technical part of this. It's a lot of information. I think we've got about 30 minutes to try to get through it. So I'm just going to hand it over to Steve.
All right, thank you, Shane. Yeah, when I went to work for the city, which was back in January, I know Shane was kind of just starting this work, and pretty much I've been growing up in Neptune Beach, and spent most of my life either here or in Gainesville or somewhere in between. It was kind of hit close to home, so I figured let's look into this a little bit closer, just from my perspective. I want to know what's going on, what we can expect. So the reason we did this is because if you look at the title records, and I'll show you some of the charts and stuff, and I'll try to keep it not too technical or too boring. But you'll see that the sea level rise, average sea level rise around here is steadily increasing. And the rate of change is accelerating, and that's where a lot of the uncertainty comes in. I'll talk about that a little bit. And I'm not going to go into why it's changing, because we're hyperly focused on local level here, and knowing that it probably is changing, and it probably will accelerate. And we're flat, surrounded by water. And we've got parts of the beach now that we have roads underwater during northeasters and king tides right now. So it continues to happen when I was a kid, but it's happening now. So something's changing. So the idea was use the best science we could with the money that we had to try to apply some really good modeling to get a good idea of what's going to happen just within this study. You're focused within the city limits of Atlantic Beach. We would have liked to stretch it farther, but we didn't really have the money or the time to be able to do that. But hopefully down the road we're going to do that. And the idea is to look at what our future risk might be, and what that impact's going to be on roads and our utilities and homes and habitats and everything in between. And then with the kind of results of this study, what we're working on now and getting kind of cranked up is how do we adapt to what we found. And the study that we did is a living study because it's based on current day predictions, and these predictions are going to change one way or another. If we're lucky, the curve will start flattening out and we won't have as much sea level rise. If we're not lucky, then we're going to have more. But either way, we need to plan for it and keep assessing this as we go forward and spending public money on infrastructure and thinking about safety and how we're going to protect things going forward. So Shane talked about funding. So let's start with what do we know? We know that Atlantic Beach is flat. You know, the green obviously is a marsh, and a little bit of gray areas you see up there are some of the old remnant dune lines, because at one time sea level was a lot higher than it was now. And because sea level was high, you can see what got left behind. You can see the north-south ridge lines along the beach, and those are all remnant dune lines from some time way back in the geological time. And on Atlantic Beach, basically, we have just a couple of drainage basins. Most of the city flows to the north out of Sherman Creek, and with a good chunk flowing south down Hopkins Creek through Neptune Beach, then a little bit to Bucket Creek, and then some directly to the marsh. So we don't have that many drainage basins, and you'll see why that's kind of important. Let's look on a global basis. Globally, this is from an average of tide gauges from all around the world. And if you look at it closely, you can kind of see that recently that rate of change is kind of accelerated. There's a little orange line in there. The orange line is satellite data. You know, around 10, 15 years ago, NASA was able to actually use satellites accurately enough to measure the ground. So a lot of the sea level changes now are measured by satellite. And that's a little different than what the gauge data, which is the blue line. And the reason that's different is a lot of areas in the world we also have subsidence we're worried about, where the ground is sinking while the water is rising. Around here, we don't really have to worry about subsidence too much. But the take-home message is that on a global basis, yeah, it's changing, and it looks like it's increasing. From a local level, this is the Mayport gauge. It's been in place since about 1930. And so you can't argue this. I mean, the data is what the data is. We've had 10 inches of sea level rise since 1930. And I think back in you know, it's about an inch a decade. So when I was a kid, at Neptune Beach playing in the marsh, well, the sea level is 4 inches lower than it is now, and I can see some of those changes in the marsh and our environment since then. It's quite interesting. And kind of associated, but not so associated, what we're talking about is look at the mangroves. They've taken over St. Augustine and the marching north. We have mangroves as far north as Georgia now, which is pretty interesting. Hasn't happened in recent history, but so things are changing. Just a couple of pictures of kind of our current conditions on the top left and the lower right are St. Augustine. That's kind of sunny day northeaster flooding. This is kind of flooding they're experiencing now, not associated with hurricanes. On the lower left and the top right is South Florida. They're a little bit lower than us, and they get it all the time now. The king tides are flooding the streets. It didn't used to happen, but it's happening now. Just that's a picture of Dutton Island, a couple palm trees out there. Kind of the thing to notice is those trees probably died 40 or 50 years ago, but they were probably 50 years old when they died. But they're surrounded by salt marsh, and palm trees don't grow in the salt marsh, but I see nothing but salt marsh around those palm trees now. So at one point in time, those palm trees weren't in the salt marsh. So I don't know what's happening. I'm not really sure, but something's happening. In the picture on the left, you can see a couple of dead branches, a couple of dead trees, and if you go over the intercoastal waterway and pay attention, any one of the bridges, you'll see palm trees, oak trees, pine trees, all dying. Some of them from Irma, some of them from Matthew, but some of them were longer term, and a lot of them were, like Casey's palm trees, have been dead for many years. But things are changing. There's the same picture of that palm tree. This is right before Dorian came for a visit. It's northeaster of the spring tide, and that palm tree is underwater. Oops. This is this right here. I just happened to be out on Dutton Island Road where the tide was coming in during that same day where I took that picture. it's just kind of interesting to see what sunny day flooding actually looks like. And it kind of brought it home to me, just standing there, watching the water come up and flood the road. Now granted, I sped this up a little bit, but still, this is over a period of about 5 minutes. It's kind of interesting. That's not a storm. The storm hadn't come yet. That's a northeaster and a spring tide. This is West Plaza on the west side of Atlantic Beach, and this is the same day. You can see the roads flooded, the driveways flooded, the ditches are full. And then just for comparison, the next day when Dorian came through, it wasn't that bad of a storm, but it was bad enough to flood this street. So, anyhow, that's kind of just setting the groundwork. So we definitely have something's going on with sea level rise. So what we decided to do, we've got to look at what are we going to plan for, what time frame. We need to estimate what the sea level rise is going to be in that time frame, and kind of figure out what the flooding events might be based on those predictions. And so we decided to kind of use a planning horizon of today, of course, in 25 years, because it's kind of a life of a mortgage, and also in 25 years, there's a relatively high degree of certainty in what sea level rise might be, because the curves are not going to change that quick. So 25 years is a fairly short period of time, so we're fairly confident. 50 years, because if we're building a water plant, a wastewater plant, rebuilding a highway, major infrastructure projects, they generally have 50-plus year lifespans. So you need to consider where it's going to be in 50 years in terms of water levels. In 100 years, just to kind of see what's happening, but nobody knows what's happening in 100 years. But you see for the predictions, it's not really rosy. And everybody, all the Corps of Engineers, NOAA, NASA, everybody's got their own ideas and their own models and come up with these curves of what they think the sea level might look like. The one of the bright orange is kind of the one we went with for this work, which is NOAA's intermediate high. This is fairly recent from 2017. It's also the same curves that the Department of Defense uses for Mayport and Norfolk and the other facilities, as well as the Southeast Florida Climate Compact, which is West Palm, Dade, and Miami, Broward County. And a lot of other cities and communities in Florida are using that prediction, so it's kind of good to stay on a common ground. And what that's telling us is that in 25 years, we're looking at about a foot, 2.5 feet in 50 years, and almost 7 feet in 100 years. It's a lot of water, but there's so much uncertainty out there in 100 years, I don't really want to focus on that. And going forward, I won't be focusing on that. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. This is Irma and Matthew. Both of them had at the peak of the storm, they were a little over 5 feet. And if we compare that to our sea level rise, the green line and the orange line are Irma and Matthew, and the line curving up through there is that NOAA line put on top of the mean high or high water. So what's that kind of telling us is by 2080, another few years down the road, we could expect normal high tides to be as high as it was during Irma and Matthew, which is kind of interesting. Nuisance flooding, that's one thing we look at. Nuisance flooding is what I showed you in those pictures, when you have king tides, spring tides, and we don't have a storm, I have a northeast blowing, and we have flooding, and we have some of that flooding right now. And so the darker blue is kind of the current areas that do flood. There are some streets in Atlantic Beach, like I showed you, that flood ordinarily several times a year during nuisance flood. And to do this, what I did was I took a mean high water and then looked at the statistics and added a foot on top of that, because the likelihood is from our gauge at Mayport is that at least once a year we're going to have water that's going to be a foot above our mean high water levels. And mean high water is, the tide goes in and out twice a day. One of those tides is always higher than the other. So if you average the higher or the high tides, that's what the mean high water is. It's a good baseline to use. So we march that forward into 2044, march it forward into 2069, and to really start seeing that we might have some effects in other parts of the city, especially down kind of in the center area. That's Aquatic Gardens by Beaches Aquatic Club. The area is all in 100-year floodplain now. And then the long magenta line going to the north is Sherman Creek and Sherman Canal. So so this is something we need to kind of think about when we're planning going forward. Looking at it kind of up close in, it's a little rough, but you can see that the general lines, some of these areas in the west part of Atlantic Beach might be subjected to flooding at least once a year, probably more. It's kind of interesting. This is my one kind of boring slide, but to give you kind of a baseline of what we did is so now we're looking at, okay, what happens during a storm? And we decided to look at using the FEMA's flood assurance rate maps, which maps out your 100-year storm, which is basically your 1% probability of this storm occurring any year. And most people know what that is because when they buy a house, they have to get an elevation certificate that shows they're either in or out of the floodplain. If they are in the 100-year floodplain, they have to buy flood insurance. You know, different building standards, you have to build your house higher and so on. So it's got some regulatory implications. So that's what we decided to look at. And there's already a good chunk of 5% of the parcels in the Atlantic Beach at least touch that 100-year floodplain. And what's interesting is when FEMA develops these maps, they update them, I don't know, maybe 6, 8, 10 years, depends on how busy they are and how much money they have. They look at what conditions are now. They don't consider future conditions. So sea level rise is not baked into the flood insurance rate maps that you can look at right now. So what we decided to do was use the same methodology FEMA does to develop these maps, but march it forward into the future and look at what the impacts are of higher sea levels on both our drainage and flooding from the ocean and from the marsh. So currently, this is what the current flood insurance rate map for Atlantic Beach looks like. And I mean, if you know Atlantic Beach, you know pretty obviously the low areas all around Sherman Creek and Aquatic Gardens that I mentioned, and then of course along the west side of the city on the marsh side. Kind of zooming in, if you were to go online and on FEMA's website and pull up the flood insurance rate map, this is kind of what it looks like overlaid on a photo. It's pretty interesting. We have these maps on the city's website along with the future predicted flood insurance rate map, base flood elevations and whatnot that I'll show you. Overlaid on aerial photographs. For tonight I didn't overlay on photographs just because it's a little easier to see. So roughly what we did, we looked at storm surge from the beach. We got to look at waves coming in and the waves run up and erosion. And what happens is as sea levels come up, if the water's deeper, the waves get higher. So we have to account for that. We can't just take our base flood elevation now and say add 2 feet of sea level rise to it. What you're actually doing is taking your sea level rise, adding your base flood elevation to it, but calculating how much higher the wave is going to be because the water's deeper now. It's a fairly accurate way of looking at it. And on the marsh side, we kind of do the same thing. We do the same analysis that FEMA does, except we bring we take our stillwater elevation, which is our 100-year flood, and we add sea level rise to that, and we calculate the wave effects on that, so we can kind of get an idea of how deep the water is going to be going up into the shoreline for the floods. All right, so here's our 100-year floodplain I just showed you. For our calculations in 25 years, we're going to be looking a little bit like this. And then in 50 years, we got a substantial portion of the city subjected to a 100-year flood. So what are the implications of that? The implications of that is we really need to start thinking, maybe we need to start thinking about adopting different building standards going forward for different parts of the city, perhaps, to plan ahead. Because someone builds a house, they expect to get 50 years out of the house. So if the house is going to be in a floodplain in 50 years, well, it's not really a good thing unless we're planning for it. And just kind of going out 100 years, just to show you that we'll all be kind of underwater, except for a few areas of the beach. Kind of zooming in on Sherman Creek and Old Atlantic Beach, Atlantic Boulevard to the south, and Sherry Drive, you can see there. That's our 100-year flood zone. And you see how it expands out through the neighborhood in 25 years with just over a foot of sea level rise. And this includes like I said, the way we did the study, it includes the impacts of drainage too. This isn't ocean water coming up in here. This is rain that can't get out because the sea level is higher and the drainage systems don't work as well anymore. And in 50 years, we're way spreading into the neighborhoods. It's quite interesting. Looking at the marsh side, a lot of that area is already in the 100-year floodplain. West Plaza and Gladiola is where I showed you that picture of it, of the spring tide and then the Hurricane Dorian picture when the street was flooded. That wasn't a 100-year flood, but the street was flooded. So those areas expand quite a bit as the sea level comes up. So people in this part of town, something really need to think about when you're building a house or if you're retrofitting your house. So what do we do with all this information? We, for now, what we did was we have a pretty good idea of using those curves that I showed you, the NOAA curve. That's about best confidence we have right now, I think. And we have a lot of confidence in modeling work that we did. The team that we hired to do that, I've worked with all those guys for about 25 years doing this kind of work, kind of in a lot of places in the Caribbean and Florida and South Carolina and whatnot. So I know they know what they're doing, so I have a lot of confidence in that. So the data that we've got now, we decided let's go ahead and map out what our critical facilities are. So look at water plants, wastewater plants, lift stations, and see what, and also egress routes. The roads that I've got highlighted there, Atlantic Boulevard and Seminole Road and some of the other major egress routes in the city that you don't want to be underwater. And of course, this is nuisance flooding, so we want to look at, do we have areas now that are subject to nuisance flooding? And we think, yeah, we might. So we might want to start thinking about how we're going to deal with those. Then going looking at a flood, the 100-year flood instead of nuisance flooding. Now we're looking out 50 years in some of these things, and we have a lot of facilities that are potentially in the floodplain that we have to think about how we're going to deal with these. When it comes time to rebuild them, do we build them higher? Do we adapt them so if the sea level rise do come up, we can inexpensively change them to protect them? If we have to rebuild the road, we rebuild the road higher? Things we've got to think about. And one of the big holes we have in our study right now is you see all the lift stations that are outside of the city limits because the city of Atlantic Beach serves all the way, water and sewer all the way up to Wonderwood. So we've got to figure out how to add that information in so we can get a better read on those. But in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're at. So going forward, we got to find these risks to our critical facilities. Schools, churches, police stations, evacuation shelters, all that kind of thing we'll throw in there. And we also kind of want to try to quantify the risk to the home and business. We don't want to scare anybody, but I think it's information we need to provide to people. Because it could happen. And this will all go into an adaptation plan for how the city is going to move forward with dealing with potential for sea level rise. And I expect that, like I said, we could look at potentially for changes in our building code. Definitely consideration of any major infrastructure projects, consider the impacts of where that facility is located, what it's going to be like in 100 years, is it subjected to flooding or is it not? And in the design, account for being able to adapt that to future conditions and things like that. So anyhow, that's what we did. So I don't know if you guys have any questions or wanted to. I'm not sure what your format is.
Yeah. So
if you have any time.
Yeah, we'll definitely. We've got time for any questions from the audience.
Perhaps I'm in the minority here. Can you explain how sea level rise is actually calculated? You mentioned there's a monitoring station at Mayport. How do they technically do it?
Well, at Mayport, they have a gauge that's our pilot stock, and the gauge has been there since 1930. It's been surveyed in. The old days, you used to go out there and read it every hour. Now it's all automatic data. So that data is collected almost continuously out there on sea levels. So if you log on to the Mayport tide gauge, you can see the predicted and the average, and the predicted tide and the measured tide. It's kind of interesting. Like with the weather we have now, you look at it, it shows where they predict the tide to be, but the actual tide is 1 foot higher than normal.
And over time, if you collect enough data, you'll be able to see if
Yeah, that's a long-term continuous record, and there's gauges like that up and down the coast, and east coast and west coast of the United States with good long-term data. Sir?
I'm good. Since you've been taking these readings since 1930 at the bar pilot dock,
Yes, sir.
and you used that as your baseline, was your baseline just 1 year in 1930, or was it 30 years, or what?
No, our baseline is what we have today.
I'm sorry, when you said it's gone up 10 inches,
Oh, yeah, 10 inches.
so since 1930, so
Yes,
how
sir.
long a period at the beginning did you use to get your baseline from where it used to be? Was it 1 year?
No, I'm not understanding it too well, but I know in 1930, you say it was 0, and today you say it's 10 inches, so we know since that
He's
baseline.
asking, when did they start measuring? Before 1930?
Yeah, they started measuring before 1930, but the accurate gauge data we have that was surveyed in began in 1930. And so you can consider that baseline for, at least for around here, to determine what sea level rise has done over the past 90 years.
Let me try to rephrase
All
my
right.
question. Did you take a single day in 1930, or did you take 12 months of 1930 to get the sea level average to get the 10 inches from, or what? There had to be some kind of time period associated with that.
Well, when that gauge was installed, they went out and they read it and wrote down the levels on that gauge, probably 12, 20 times a day, every day since 1930. So every day since 1930, that water level was recorded at different times, and they averaged it out over each year. So an average of 1930, an average of 31, 32, on up to the present day, and that's what gives us that 10 inches.
All right, so that would sound like you took the whole year of 1930 and said the sea level, average sea level in 1930 was, I don't know, 2 feet.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, which is the last year you have full data for, the level is now 10 inches higher than it used to be.
Yeah,
back then.
instead of 2 feet, now it's 2 feet, 10 inches.
Is that consistent with what's happening in the rest of the East Coast, 10 inches?
Some places it's higher and some places it's lower, and a lot of it depends on the angle of the coast. Like if you go up to Georgia Bight up near Savannah, the tide ranges are a lot higher up there. So sea level rises are a little different. Down in Key West, I think they're over 12 inches in about the same time period. And there's a couple places in Alaska where sea level's gone down, but that's because the volcanoes are pushing the earth up.
That's counterintuitive to me in a way. I would think that the sea level is the Atlantic Ocean, right? And it's the same whether you're 200 miles south of here or 200 miles north. Now granted, if you're in Nova Scotia, it should be different because the tides up there may be 20 feet and at the equator they're much smaller. But is there that much difference between Daytona Beach and Neptune and Atlantic Beach? And
No, but there's a difference between Jacksonville and Key West. There's a difference between Jacksonville and Nova Scotia. And yeah, you have a big tide range, but the average is the average, right? You take it in the high and low, your average is out. But it's got a lot to do with the shape of the earth. I don't understand it, I'll be honest with you. And, the heat of the water, because when the water's hotter, it expands more. We have warmer water here than they do up north. So sometimes the rate of change is a little bit different.
Since 1930, have that had any periods when it was actually went down any, or is it a consistent rise? I remember looking at the graph, but I couldn't really tell much from it.
Some years it changes because averaging everybody out globally, that's what you got, right? But yeah, you can see some years it changes, but if you average everything together, that's what you get for a linear trend. So I've looked at that every which way I can. I can't go up the way really to argue with what they've come up with.
Last thing, I guess, they built the jetties at Mayport in the early 1900s. I don't remember the exact year, but it was significantly before World War II.
That's right.
And since then, they've deepened. Well, way back when, the river was only 12 feet deep. And they've deepened it several times, and the one they're working on now is taking it down significantly more than it used to be. So it's been channelized, so to speak, and the velocity of that water coming in at high and low tide movement is much greater than it used to be.
That's right.
I think because it wasn't able to spread out over the marsh areas that we had since then filled in and built houses on. Has that affected any of it at all? Did that affect the bar pilots and the way they were collecting the data?
Not so much, because the bar pilot stock is located close to the mouth of the river. And again, we're looking at an average. You know, you're looking at the highs and the lows. So if it's coming in faster, it's going out faster. So you're looking at the average of the highs and the lows. So I don't think that had much impact on it. And if you look at some of the other permanent gauges, like in Charleston, you see the same trend. You go down to Miami, you see the same trend. The trend's unmistakable.
Is it safe to assume that both the rise and the elevation for Atlantic Beach, that we could use that same assumption for Neptune and Jacksonville Beach? And also, is the work that you've done here, is it easy to take this kind of data and kind of use that as a foundation for what might happen in Jax Beach and Neptune Beach?
Yes and no. Neptune Beach and Jax Beach are both kind of lucky because they have pretty good stormwater models. A lot of what we did, because a lot of the flooding that we're predicting we may have is not due to water coming in over the beach or water coming in from the marsh. It's due from rainfall not being able to drain. And so that's why it's critical to be able to do the coastal assessment, the coastal risk, to see where your water level is going to be, and then run your stormwater model on top of that to see how your drainage is going to function. So yeah, you can do that. The hard part that takes a little bit of work is coming up with the coastal surge analysis from the intercoastal side and from the marsh side. But it's not super difficult. But it can be adapted to it. You can't straight take what we did and move it to Neptune Beach because it's very site specific. Yes, sir.
Is the land mass sinking? You said like in Alaska it was going up? So
Yeah, the place in Alaska is going up.
Yeah, but is it in this area, is it?
No, we're pretty stable. We're on good solid sand sitting on top of lime rock. We're pretty stable here. As far as I know.
So Steve, can you just talk about what the next steps are with the adaptability plan, if you can, or is that still kind of in the works?
No, I can talk about that real quick. So as I kind of mentioned, we kind of have the maps that we're going with right now. We're going to kind of continually refine those a little bit. But and then we look at our critical facilities, and then we're going to look at each single one of those that are potentially vulnerable in the future and decide what we need to do to help adapt those. We look at the roadways. How can we adapt these roadways to higher sea level conditions? And that's the challenge going forward that we're going to be working on. We'll probably be done. What do you think, Shane? Maybe July.
No, we applied for another grant from the state to help us with that. We don't know if we've won that yet. It will depend on how fast we can do that process.
But we're going to be real deliberative because this is it's not happening tomorrow. You know, it's kind of a slow moving thing. So we've got time. And like I said, the vulnerability assessment and the adaptation plan, I'll be living documents because I can't tell you how these predictions are going to change. All I can do is tell you what the predictions are now and what the consensus is now.
Question?
I just had one from interest is like with these models and when the rainwater is collected, I guess, because the groundwater table has risen from the sea level rise, but will that water drain at every tide change, or will the water be standing through will it take multiple days for that to drain out? You model that?
Normal days it'll drain as it does now. But you made a good point that I didn't mention is as the sea level rise comes up, the groundwater table comes up, so you have less storage capacity in the soil for rainwater, so you have more rainwater to run off. That's one of the inputs we put into our modeling. But on a normal day-to-day basis, it'll just come in and out with the tide.
Okay.
We won't have a problem there.
Can you just maybe narrow, zoom in on one of those maps and say, let's just take City Hall, for example, and tell us what it looks like in 25 years for City Hall? Maybe some people don't think that's critical.
The police building is critical.
The police building is next to it, and that's definitely critical infrastructure.
And it was a weekday or weekend, I guess. Yeah, here we are. City Hall is right there at the intersection of Seminole and Sherry Drive, with Sherman Creek running just to the side of City Hall. And one thing I didn't do, because it would have gotten, the maps would give me a headache, is I didn't put any elevations on here. I just put the extents of the flooding. But if you put the elevations on there, it's really interesting. But you look at it on the screen and it's like, well, it's like a kaleidoscope. So you can see City Hall is definitely likely. City Hall ought to be on a floodplain now, but it's not for other reasons. But yeah, a good chunk of City Hall is impacted.
See,
Yes, sir.
I mean, for the slow ones like me, when you show that, you see a 100-year flood zone in 2044.
Yep.
Explain to me, what does that mean? Like I'm a fifth grader?
Well, you know what the FEMA flood maps are?
Yes.
So this is, the current 100-year flood zone is what your FEMA flood map shows now, which is, if you look on your FEMA map, that's what you're going to see for that part of Atlantic Beach. And so that same map, considering sea level rise in 25 years, is going to look like that. So in 25 years from now, if these predictions are right, you'll go to FEMA's website and you'll look at the flood zone. It's going to look like that. It's not going to look like it does today. If you got there in 50 years, your flood map could look like that.
If I build in Atlantic Beach in, say, 20 years, when I go to the city hall and get a building permit, will they tell me then the zone that will be flooded and how I should build my
No,
house?
they're going to tell you that zone right there. But the idea is, because that's what federal flood insurance is based on, what the flood zone is now, not what it could be in the future. But my hope is that we disseminate this information properly. When you do go to build your house, and you'll see in 20 years I might be in a flood zone, you might consider building your house a little higher.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Then the city would be telling you you have to have your house on stilts or something. I mean, what will the city do for us?
Well, what the city is, like I said, what the city is going to do for you now is tell you if you're in a floodplain or not now. But hopefully we'll be able to disseminate this information so you'll see, perhaps you're building your house in one of these light green areas where in the future you may be in a floodplain. The city's not going to make you do anything right now, but it's up to you to decide what you want to do.
But it seems like what you're trying to educate all of us, not only the builder, but also the city should have some kind of laws that make people build higher.
We have laws that make people build higher in the floodplain now. And make you, right now, City of Atlantic Beach, you have to build your finished floor elevation 2.5 feet above what the predicted under-year flood is. And, but if you're outside of that floodplain, outside of what we're showing there, and maybe in that green area or that tannish area, city building codes don't require you to do anything there. It's because these are predictions. We're not sure what's going to happen. But a lot of it's going to be, if you as a home builder, if you have this information, you might come to the city and say, well, what do you think the flood elevation is going to be in 25 years? And we can say, well, our best guess is it's going to be here, and you can take that into account when you're building your house. But what the city is going to do from a city perspective is make sure that all the infrastructure is protected from these conditions. Yes, sir.
I would assume that knowing how slow government works, that we need to be designing for and improving the critical structures for the 2070 time frame rather than 2044, because by the time we get to get approvals and get things in place, we're going to be at 2044.
I don't disagree. If you're, say we have to build a new wastewater plant, it's a $10, $12, $15 million investment. I think you're going to take 2069 into account because the life of that facility you're building is going to be beyond 2069. Rick?
Can you speak more to the 100-year flood? It's not like it's going to happen every 100 years, but that's more about possibility, or that always confuses me.
Yeah, it's a real confusing thing. If you go on to NOAA's website, for example, and look at the hurricane surge zones, and you just look at a Category 2, Category 3 storm, and holy cow, the whole beach is covered in Category 3 storm. The way they do that, they look at what kind of worst case scenarios, and they're great for evacuation maps because they cover worst case scenarios, but there's no probability tied to that. So there's not much you can do with it. But if you go to FEMA and look at the 100-year flood map, which is based on historical record of storms and what they think the 100-year storm is going to be, and they do their modeling similar, well, exactly like we did our modeling, and it's their best guess of what your chances are 1% every year that you may have a flood there. So the likelihood is during the life of a mortgage, say, you might have a 25% chance of seeing those kind of floodwaters at your house. And that's got the regulatory implications both from the federal government all the way down to local building code. So that's why we went with that.
Any other questions?
One more. If we had 10 inches sea level rise now, from here going forward, where would the beach be? It would be 20 feet further inland?
Now, one thing you'll see, look at the 100-year flood here in 2069, you don't see that beach area flooding. And the reason you don't is because the federal government is committed to the Duval County Shore Protection Project of maintaining our beach at the elevation it is. So if we didn't, if we're down in Ponte Vedra, it might be a different story where nobody's maintaining the beach. But we're here in Jacksonville, and the federal government maintains the beach for us in perpetuity.
So we're not going to have to put seawalls there like they did just north of Milano?
Now, one of the safest places to live is going to be on the sand dune. Not considering that your house might blow over, but in terms of flooding, it'll be a good.
That's the federal government paying for that?
Federal,
and Jack Beach?
Federal, state, and local. We all pay share. Federal government pays, I think, 69% of the project.
Because of the neighbor base?
No, it's because it was considered, Duval County was considered many years ago a critically eroding shoreline, and now there's a number of beaches in Florida that they've committed to protecting. We're lucky that we're one of them.
Okay.
All right, well, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
We appreciate it very much. It's very informative and look forward to
Add one thing.
Yes, absolutely.
We've got a website on this project that has all the technical reports and the full report on it. Way more information than Steve can give in one presentation.
Okay.
But if you go to the Planning and Community Development Department's website, go to Department of Projects, you'll find it there.
Okay, great. We can put that maybe on our website, so that, so,
We can send you a link to it.
yes, there's a link, we can put it on our website, and that way we can click on that as well. Okay, so one last thing before we wrap up the meeting. In your chair, you'll find a little slip of paper. This is our survey. This is something we have started recently because we want to get feedback from our attendees. We want to know how we're doing, and we would love to get some suggestions for future topics. We want to make sure we remain relevant to the issues that are concerning to you as beaches citizens. So if you can take 2 seconds, fill it out, 4 questions.
There's a box in the back.
There's a box in the back where you can just fold it under there. If you don't want to prize them, and we can all over but we do appreciate the feedback. And one last thing, for those who are able, if you can help take your chair and stack it over there. That will help us clean up and get out much faster. Thank you very much.